There we go. Yeah, so Dan, one of the things I was just telling you about EarthSong being plant-centric and the fact that you and I are both elders now. We're in the same age bracket, and the plants were here before us, they'll be here after us. And as you were saying before we went on, we're just so utterly dependent upon them. It's not even any question about that. But what I want you to do, if you don't mind, I want you to just tell us a little bit about you and your relationship with plants, like your physical, where you're born, and then your how it progressed with plants.
Well, I had plants in my blood and in my bones right from the very, very beginning. And when I was a little kid, early on elementary school, I was growing up in Montreal in the suburbs, and I always wanted to be outside, number one. But when I got to be about 9 or 10, I really had this urge to dig up some of our lawn and to start growing something that we could eat. And I don't know why. It was really there strong. And years later, well, about 4 years later, after trying to convince my parents all that time, they finally let me do a bit. And it was in a really bad location under a deck in the backyard, under a kitchen deck with about 2 hours of light a day. And I planted beets and carrots. And the beets and carrots, after a while, I didn't do very much. It was just straightforward. And then one day we had beets and carrots. I mean, carrots and potatoes. It's carrots and potatoes. And I told a story in one of my books about my Aunt Molly showing up just when I happened to be pulling some carrots to show my mum. And she she gasped and said, "Sally, I thought carrots grew on trees." We back in that day, it was just people. Nobody was growing food gardens. It was all landscape gardens. So that was my start. But then I had a few. One time, the postman came with a seed catalog, and chills went through my body. I was just so knowing that there was something that I was caught up with that Stokes seed catalog from 1958 or something. And I couldn't tell what it was, but I knew that I had something to do with that.
Wow,
But
I love it.
then
Yeah.
I started to be interested more and more in plants. And one day um, I had this very bad rash in my in the crotch of my arms and behind my knees, and it was a nervous rash, and it was very itchy, and I couldn't make it go away. And basically, I was in this relationship that was very, very difficult. I was trying to rescue this woman, so I think and hope I learned not to do any more rescue work of that kind anymore. But one one night, nettles came to me out of the blue, the presence of nettles, and the nettles were saying, "Sting yourself on those spots with me."
Wow.
And I did, sure enough, the next day. And it was, I can only describe it as an orgasm of pleasure and pain at the same time, right at the spot where the rashes were. And it was really intense, a wonderful feeling, but so like hard to describe. Pleasure and
Oh,
pain at the
yeah.
same time.
I
And
personally
then,
know it because I've, stung myself purposely with nettles, but for our listeners, no, especially I never heard that on a so like I've used them for like arthritic conditions quite successfully for people and even for myself, but I've never heard them on a wound because that is extreme because of the sensitivity of the area.
totally, totally.
Yeah, wow.
But that that sensation didn't last very long, and the rash went away immediately.
That
Practically
that
by the next day, it was gone.
Wow, that's an amazing story. So yeah, so and
That was number.
it feels like the plant told you, like it feels like you got an intuition. You didn't look up a book, you just said nettles, right?
Yeah, nettles just came to me. It's hard
Yeah.
to describe, you know, how that communication happens. I was appreciating that in your conversation with Nancy Turner, where it's so difficult to describe this communication between people and plants, and but there's something that does go on. And
I'm just rereading, or not actually reading it for the first time. I personally studied with Dorothy McLean from Findhorn about 4 times, but I'm just reading her book To Hear the Angels Sing. And I'm only bringing this up because she found that the plants knew when she was communicating with them, they knew immediately her thoughts, like before she even said anything.
oh,
And
I
that,
have an incredible example of that.
go
That
ahead,
was
yes.
maybe my second really profound experience with plants, and that was Devil's Club.
Uh,
That also came up in your talk. Devil's Club, but back when I was in the early days of trying to find out about herbs, I thought, well, I heard it was very powerful medicine, and I was in the woods about to dig up a patch, and I had a little shovel with me, and here's this beautiful Devil's Club plant, and I swear there was a bit of a microsecond before I even put the shovel in the ground where the outer leaves of the Devil's Club cringed, like the plant was aware that something was going to happen. They folded inward, and then when it actually the fork hit the ground, I've never seen such an immediate response since. Even now, plants don't normally do that, but that Devil's Club just curled in like it knew that I was about to end its being, and of course that made me think about, wow, it's, it exudes such a powerful presence, and those barbs are pretty, like, you don't want to mess with them. And the, and the inside of that plant was this incredible sensitivity that it could know what was happening even before it was happening. That blew me away.
Yeah, you touched my heart with Devil's Club because yeah, it's been definitely one of my teachers, and very sacred to the coast, to all the native people here, but to my teacher Helen. So yeah, so Devil's Club. So carry on you with your story. So where did you go from Montreal and how did your life progress with plants?
Well, I came out to Montreal to visit my brother Mike, who was living on the beaches between Tofino and Ucluelet, and that's that was an incredible liberation from me from the big smoke of Montreal to just the wild coast there. And I just lived on the beach for a while
Where-
by myself actually, and I was studying native plants and I was learning about some of the things that were growing there that I could eat, and uh, that was pretty cool. Eating the local seaside plantain, and there's a what I call the horseradish plant. I forget its Latin name now. That had a combination of like it really tastes like horseradish. It's quite succulent, and you don't find it anywhere else. But long story short, a friend came with an alternative school, and I ended up going to that alternative school in Aldergrove, and the other teacher, who is still my good friend after all these years, Dave Manning, uh, he and I combined our interest and love of plants, and then with really no background or experience, I ended up writing this book with him on native wild plants and how they were used, and it became a best-selling book.
I know that's amazing.
That was 1971, and it's since been republished. by my publisher of now, who is Howard White of Harbor Publishing, and it's a bestseller again. And it was just some fortuitous thing. The plants maybe picking me and Dave to promote them, and because I had so little experience. But then uh, stuff started to add up because in writing that book, I went to First Nations places and to Duke of Wars
Mm,
and read books in the libraries. When back in those days, there was really a lot of books that you don't find anymore these days, thanks to AI.
right.
But I learned a lot, and that got me going on plants for a while. But at some point, um, I ended up being on Salt Spring Island after being in a lot of rural places in BC, much less populated than Salt Spring Island. But that enabled me to settle down and start actually growing gardens, which before I couldn't do. And before long, I started to realize that there were all these amazing plants that people didn't really know about. And they are our basic foods. And and then there were other foods that we didn't even know anything about. And like I'd heard about quinoa from somebody who had been to Bolivia and Peru and had this foundation in Denver called the Quinoa Corporation or something like that. And I think I was the first person to try growing quinoa in Canada. And then I had amaranth to that. And like maybe one of my most simple revelations was that people didn't know anything. They didn't know beans about beans. Most people ate beans that were really old and dehydrated, and they wondered why they were hard to digest. Um, and then I realized when you eat your own dried beans, like most people do in other countries that are relatively fresh and haven't been sitting in bins and barrels for 4 or 5 years, then they they cook up much easier. They can absorb water better and they cook faster and they're more digestible and a very simple thing about an amazing crop that people in North America really didn't understand. That's why they had a bad rap. A lot of people don't think much of beans because they've never had a pleasure eating them. You know?
I just
And
heard
there
a
are
neat,
lots of other things like that that I discovered
I just heard a
till
neat
now.
story about Thailand, just and fits in with your thing of seed saving. Uh, Dorn Cox, he's into regenerative farming. Um, and he's into apps, so that's kind of how I met him I met him through Anissa. I mean, I told you about
Oh
Anissa.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
she studied with me for 25 years ago. Anyway, she contacted me about my app, and now I'm in process of. But the story is that there's soybeans in Thailand. That not only are they saving the seeds and of the soybean, but they're creating a cookbook, and each cookbook is tied to a particular species of soybean. So there's recipes for that particular soybean in that particular family. And so I thought that was, and that's kind of my goal is to bring that relationship of plants into the fore, like that it's much more than just getting, like you're saying, it's eating a bean that you grow and it's fresh and it's totally different. Anyways, I just wanted to put that in there.
Well, I'm glad you brought up soybeans. Is that has always been a real big one for me because uh, somehow back when they were first beginning the genetic modification of soybeans, I think they chose a really bad cultivar to do that with. And that's like, there's only a few, like in the millions and billions of acres that they grow of soybeans. It's basically just a couple of varieties. And I tried cooking that one, and it was horrible. Horrible. And then when I was growing my own, I realized, just like everything else, there are so many cultivars, just like you're talking about. You could write a book about even one of them. And I discovered about half a dozen that were way, way better. And all the way along, I've been trying to tell people that, wow, no wonder they chose soybeans to genetically modify them because they're such an amazing food. They're so high in protein, so high in oil. They've been big time in the Far East forever and ever, and all the things they do with them, let alone just cooking them whole. So all the way along, I've been trying to promote soybeans that pretty much, I think 99% of the soybeans that are grown in North America are genetically modified, which is, it's hard to wrap your mind around. And people, even at the garden level, should be thinking about growing soybeans because they're such an edible, like just densely packed nutrition.
I can feel your love for them too, like your passion, like they like again, I'm gonna ask this bit weird question, but how do you feel your relationship with the soybean plant is? Like I see something there, but I wanted you to talk about it a bit as a plant.
Well, I have a relationship with all the plants that I grow,
I
and
totally believe I was so excited to have you on because
it's a hard thing to describe because I'm very, very lucky to have a vocation where I I wake up in the morning and I do a walkabout and I say hello to all the different things that I'm growing, and I have a relationship with them and I know them in a way just because that's my vocation and I spend so much time with them. I can feel their moods. I can feel uh, their energy. I can know when there's something up. They it's not like they all communicate to me all the time, but
no, no.
all on any given day, something big always happens. For me, it's something big, something I see in the plants, something the plants tell me, and it's very often a surprise. And all in all, there's such mystery in those plants. If there's any one thing I can say is that we hardly have a clue about who they really are and how amazing they are. And then adding to that, it's about time we woke up to the fact that uh, we have we have to be in good relationship with them, or else it's game over for us. And it's about time we started doing that. And that involves not just it involves not only the food plants, not only the medicinal plants, but all plants. Oh, I lost your voice.
Oh, that was me not speaking.
Oh, you
That
weren't
was
even saying anything.
me being speechless. No, thanks, Dan. I really, again, I did get blessed to come and see your latest pharma, I think, and it always amazed me. Only once, but all the seeing everything being allowed to do its full thing by going to seed. So I just remember all the lettuces and they're very similar to wild lettuce because I believe that's one of the mothers of all lettuces, which again, I think when we're tuning into working with learning plants if we go back to the mother plants like I personally I'm a very big coffee drinker and so I bought myself a coffee plant and so I talk to my coffee plant every morning when I'm in the coffee but all this comes from Ethiopia and that's where the mother plants come so seeing your lettuces, they all look like wild lettuce, but it was so beautiful because they were all allowed. And I think there's also something in your work that's very unique because you're not cutting them off at that stage of life. You're allowing them to go to full fruition. They're living their full life out. Anyways, if you can go
I
on.
was I was once in Ethiopia, and it was a seed saving venture. They were I won't go into that story, but there I was um, in a field, standing there with some of the people that I was with, and this farmer comes up to me out of all the people, and he hands me a couple of heads of wheat, and he tells me in broken English that you should take these back to Canada. These are really special. They they have a wonderful flavor. You can even cook them up whole or make them into bread if you want. But and they're very early to mature. Well, sure enough, I bring them back. I smuggled them in. I was very lucky to get them in because the person ahead of me at the inspection at the airport admitted that he had been to a farm, and they pulled him aside. But then I said, no, I was just working on a book, and and they didn't look at the two heads of this beautiful wheat, and sure enough, I multiplied that wheat and multiplied it and multiplied it, and it was everything that he said. It was two
Wow.
weeks earlier than any Canadian wheat and I was working on wheats. I tried to find ones that were really early to mature for our climate here. This one was way earlier, and I knew that so much of the plant breeding in Canada had been just to get wheats to mature a day or two earlier than the previous ones. And here was this wheat. And so I ended up sending it to some friends in California. It ended up being a commercial crop there, actually, grown on hundreds of acres. And I don't know what's happened to it now, but I still have it going. And um, funny enough, my friend Fern, who's working with me now, just took an incredible photo of it to an exhibit that's happening on the island here. And it's got a blue tinge, and it makes it look very, very special. A blue tinge in the head and even in the seed. There's something that emanates from it that is not that's an additional deep color, and I love it. And but you're talking about like did did the wheat come to like who did what? You know, how did that wheat get in my hands? Was it the wheat's energy?
Yeah,
Yeah, it
yeah.
had to have been.
Well,
So,
I love Dorothy says that, obviously we're working together. Well, wheat's an example of it. Like they started the original wheat was, very, very small and then they kept, the farmers kept working with it. And so that one was probably also, replanted and replanted until it became a beautiful plant. So, but yeah, so yeah, that's gave me again goosebumps. What a beautiful story. And I love the help at the airport too. Don't mention
I got
farm.
another. I got to tell you another Ethiopian story because this also really says a lot. And I've told this to quite a few people because it was a revelation to me. Back in the day, when I was still just getting going, I found an Ethiopian barley through the U.S. Seed Saver Exchange, and I hadn't grown barley before, so I tried it, and it was a hull-less barley. The hull comes right off at harvest time, and that made it easy. You didn't
Yeah.
have to somehow figure out how to get the hull off. But anyways, when I ended up in Ethiopia, I I was in the gene bank in Addis Ababa and surrounded by a few scientists, and I told them that I was growing Ethiopian barley. And they thought that was the funniest thing they had ever heard in their entire plant lives because they were laughing, laughing, laughing. I couldn't figure out why they were laughing at me. And then this guy translated and he said, um, they think it's very funny that you should think that there's one Ethiopian barley because you see that storage room right beside the office here? That's our where we keep our seeds under controlled conditions. And we have over 6,000 different kinds of barleys in that room. And we know them really well. We know which ones are for special occasions, which ones you have for breakfast, which ones you have just to make beer with, whatever. There are diverse uses, but like the lights went on, and I realized, oh, here's little Dan Jason thinking that he's found, the diversity when these guys know about diversity.
Wow.
It was
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Yes. Plants, they're just so amazing. So yeah, basically Earth Song is what plants can teach us. So there's another example. Again, yeah. Okay, then I guess Is there any other plants that stand out to you as teachers? Like, maybe not plants because you with so many plants, but experiences with plants that kind of said to you, somehow communicated something to you.
Well, funny enough, just before we started talking, I harvested one of those special plants, and uh, it came in the mail to me about maybe almost 20 years ago now, and it was somebody sent me some tobacco that was discovered in an urn in a burial site in the Great Lakes area, and they carbon dated that tobacco to be over 1,000 years old. And this guy, he said, "Don't, you're not allowed to say anything more than that, but you're welcome to grow it out and just give it away. Don't sell it because it's sacred and special." And the first year I grew that at the Salt Spring Yoga Center, it stopped everybody in their tracks. It just had a presence about it that said, "This is I'm from somewhere long ago, you guys, and I'm still here, and take me as medicine." And still to this day, somebody just came a couple of days ago, and they walked through the entire garden of hundreds of different things here, and the one thing that struck them was this old 1,000-year-old tobacco plant. And
Beautiful, beautiful.
over the years, I don't have a personal affinity to tobacco, but I have a really strong affinity to that plant.
Which is
And
cool, which is really cool. Like, yeah, I mean, it speaks about the plant being sentient beings and just being personalities versus being a substance, a commodity, a use, an extractive thing. No, you just love this plant, even though you don't particularly like tobacco, like as a substance. So just a warning, we've got 10 minutes left. I'm just on the free Zoom, so I kind of like it because then it keeps me focused. But last time I ended it too quickly with Nancy's. I just want to give us that warning. But what a beautiful story. What a essence of Earth Song. That's what I'm trying to get at. It's like these plants are incredible beings aside from whatever the uses are, and their uses are, you know, off the chart. I mean, like you said, when all our cells are every single cell has carbon in it. We're carbon beings, and the plants, I love that the trees are made out of carbon. They're made out of air. They take the carbon out of the air and create these massive oak trees.
I love that too. Every morning I have two special trees right outside my bedroom window, and I always greet them. They always greet me, and I always think, well, nobody added any compost, any soil amendments, any nada, nothing.
Nada,
And there
nada.
they are, and I have to practically fall over backwards to see the tops of them, and and they and all the plants, they're just here are we humans running around every which way, and they're just in one spot, and they do all they do without even
Yeah.
just being rooted to that one spot. It's incredible.
Yeah, I live now in Summit Avenue on where the oak trees are, but I won't go into details, but my last place I lived, the developers got the place and destroyed it, which broke my heart and put me into a big grieving process. So I did a research on the oak meadows here in Victoria, and what happened in a 20-year period, they basically cut down most of the oak savanna. But I'm living right on the edge because at this property I live on, there's a huge, about 300-year-old oak as a neighbor that is just gorgeous. But beyond there down, they're all gone. You know what I mean? But on the hill up, then we go right into Summit Park, which is an oak park. So I'm right in the oak savanna. So, again, you're saying that these trees were here before we were, before the, for the colonize the place. So they hold that incredible sacredness and memory and everything. Mm.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dan. I'm still feeling the tobacco plant. I'm just feeling just that. Yeah, I mean, it's like the coffee plant I have now. I just met coffee. I purposely went and bought it from Garden Works and nice, fortunately, a nice big one. But every morning when I look at it, and again, I don't know if Dorothy talks about this, Dorothy McLean, and I'm still wrestling with it. I have my own experiences with it, but there's kind of the individual plant which take your tobacco plant, but then it belongs to a family of plants. And those family of plants, coffee plants have been here for 10 million years. So ginkgo's been here for 200 million years. So these families of plants. So, and if in when you study herbalism and stuff, you'll see that there's a lot of the similar constituents in any family of plants. The different types of willow will all have salicin in them. So I'm just sort of, do you have sometimes an experience or a feeling of a bigger energy behind the plants? Do you know what I'm asking?
Oh yeah, I totally feel that. And all I can say is, yeah, that's right on.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
she calls them devas. Um,
Yeah, the
yeah,
overlighting davas of different plants. And
different
I
stance
felt
pieces.
that.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
yeah. I personally, it's kind of cool. I feel like EarthSong, I'm trying to get people into individual plans because I think we can, just like you and I can have a relationship. We're humans, but you're Dan and I'm Dawn, and we have a unique kind of thing. So I think that, and you, of course, with this particular tobacco, you have a whole story around it. You have a whole history with it. So I feel like there's individual relationships with plants, which are vitally important, but then there's this overriding energy you can tune into too. So that's kind of where I'm going with. So we got about, oh, we only got 4 minutes left. So, and this
Well,
is a hard
maybe
one.
just add to that. I think
Yeah.
it's important to add that, you know, it's so evident in different cultures, the way certain plant families are way more significant and important in this culture and other ones in another culture.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah. So we got about 4 minutes left. And I know this is a really hard question. I mean, and you've already given a lot of who you are and people can take from it. But if there was anything that you wanted to pass on to listeners about your experiences with plants, what would you suggest would give them the not the best, but the better relationship with plants? Like any actions, yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, it's just a matter of trying to be open to them and trying to really be in their presence and to realize that we're only beginning to understand just the depth of possibility there in terms of our relationship to them and we like where they are coming from. I think even at this stage in my life, I'm seeing things about plants and experiencing them that I've never experienced before. And I think the whole world right now is wanting to open up to a kind of newness. And it, it definitely comes down to our relationship to plants on this planet because that's the nature of who we are, and somehow we have to figure out a right relationship to all the plants, and of course the birds and animals too. But without plants,
No birds and animals.
where are we? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's just to work on to remind yourself to pay attention to your plants and feel what they want. The thing that most people who are gardeners and plant enthusiasts, all they do that anyway. So many
Oh,
people do
exactly.
that.
I'm
And it's
just
just,
trying to get people that, oh, this is interesting. Say hello to a plant. But that there's actually a magic in that because if you say hello, you're immediately breaking a taboo. You're immediately acknowledging that there's a potential there, you know.
yeah, yeah,
So,
that's so true.
so I'm just watching the clock here and I don't want to, it cuts off pretty fast. So I don't want to end on,
We got one
well,
minute and
yeah,
47
yeah,
seconds.
you got 1 minute and 44 seconds. You got a clock on, you got
Well,
a timer on yours too?
one thing, sorry,
Go ahead, just go
I
ahead.
just wanted to say there's one thing to think about, and that is saying hello is one thing, um, and words are one thing, but in terms of the communication with plants and between plants and humans and plants, there's something that happens before the words, and it's almost like a telepathic thing. And you know what I'm talking about, and
Oh,
that's
yes,
we have to be aware of that. That there's um, the communication happens on a deeper level than articulation of it.
yes, yes. Thanks for saying that. Yes. And again, I guess just the training is to be open to that. So instead of just being closed to these are background, but they're sentient beings, is to be open to which plants maybe want to communicate with you. And like you said, it's a subtle thing, but it's there. Okay, I'm going to end us without hit it going period. I wouldn't mind. I'll connect with you again. We haven't connected for a while, but as far as the
But
recording goes, we'll end there. And thank you for being you. I mean, really, sincerely.
thank you for
Like,
being you, and good luck with this mission. And you're an awesome guy, and
yeah.
thanks
I mean,
for
it's
having me.
and yeah. I think we both have. Yeah, it's time.